Hello, my friend. Welcome to a space where light and shadow sit side by side, not to be judged, but to be understood more deeply. Today, we're stepping into a very particular kind of journey, a journey into the heart of Aries, not just the first sign of the Zodiac, but a living symbol of raw power, of primal fire, and of the cracks that few are brave enough to truly see. If you've ever loved an Aries, if you are an Aries, or if there's a part of you that longs to burn without apology, then you're exactly where you need to be, because right after this, you'll meet their first face, a radiant force that walks into your life like a storm, bold, electric, and unforgettable. You know, sometimes God doesn't send you an angel with white wings. The one he sends is a burning soul, a storm dressed in fire. An Aries, they don't enter your life like soft morning light. They arrive like the first thunder of the season, sudden, bold, without warning. And from that moment on, you are no longer the same. Aries carries a kind of energy this world rarely encounters, a living current of light, as if electricity had learned to walk, lighting up the entire room, and then lighting something in you that you thought was long gone, just a few minutes with them. And suddenly you believe in yourself in ways you never did before. It's as if they see something in you, even you couldn't see. They don't use soft words to comfort you. They use a fiery gaze to wake you up. Not gentle but true, not soothing but soul-stirring, and in that one moment, something in you is lit. I once met an Aries like that. I was lost, uncertain, and they showed up like a question from the universe. How long will you keep waiting before you finally start living as yourself? No preaching, no long speech, just a glance, and a presence so alive it felt like it burned the silence into clarity, and I woke up. Aries doesn't come to paint your life pretty. They come to tear down the walls you've built around your dreams. They see the path you keep avoiding. They make you face the truth not with pressure, but with a presence so raw, so on fire, you can't look away. Sometimes, I think, God uses Aries as blades of light, not to fight others, but to cut through the fear inside ourselves. Because you know, we've all been afraid of failing, afraid of being rejected, afraid we're not good enough, strong enough, worthy enough. But then Aries walks in, and you realize no one's waiting for you to be ready. Life isn't waiting. God isn't waiting. You must step into your own battlefield, and if you're lucky, an Aries will be there somewhere in the corner of your life, looking you straight in the eye, quietly saying, "Go, don't look back." What makes them special isn't what they say, it's how they live. Every step is fire. Every story is motion. They don't teach, but you learn the whole universe just by watching them, and then you realize they are the miracle disguised as a storm, because sometimes, to come alive, you first have to be shaken awake, and to be awakened, you need a soul with enough light and enough fire to burn away what's been dead in you for far too long. And Aries won't hold you gently to soothe your pain, but they'll look you in the eye and say, "You weren't born to run away." I believe God sends each of us an Aries at least once, not to comfort us, but to remind us that we were never meant to live a life half-lit, that we were always meant to be different, and that we were never meant to cage our dreams, just because the world might not understand them. They come to ignite the part of you that still wants to survive. They are fire, a blade, a sound that wakes life itself. And that's also why so few truly understand them. Because that kind of light, it saves you, but it scares people too. But if you dare to step into that brightness, if you let yourself be lit, you will never again live halfway. And then one day, as you sit among the ashes of your old self, you'll realize that light didn't just come from them, it came from you. Because an Aries doesn't create the miracle for you. They simply remind you, you were the miracle all along. Soft wind shifts inside you. Something stirs quietly, deeply. It may be time to listen to what comes next, as the flame of Aries passes from their heart into your soul. Not everyone is born to speak boldly about what they love, but Aries is different. They don't hide the fire inside, they live it. They let it blaze out into the world, fearlessly, fully, and with a kind of raw, magnetic honesty that stops you in your tracks. They don't preach their passion, they embody it. Being around an Aries feels like standing next to a forge of the soul, hot, deep, alive. When they're passionate about something, it's like the whole room catches flame, not to burn, but to be illuminated. They don't just live, they ignite every moment. Every word, every glance, every move carries a kind of sacred charge. Aries is the kind of person who can make you sit up in the middle of the night and ask yourself, have I really lived? Or have I just been waiting for someone to light me up? And then they show up. The fire they carry doesn't scream, but it's big enough to reach into the forgotten corners of your soul. They make you remember the first dream you ever had. They make you feel your heart beating again, not just to survive, but to live true. I once met an Aries like that. She didn't speak about her passion using numbers or accolades. She told it through her eyes, through the way her voice trembled when she spoke of what made her happy, and through the way she never stepped back, even when the world pushed hard against her. That wasn't just passion, it was a living prayer, a sacred call to every sleeping soul nearby. Some people live to please, some live just to exist, but Aries lives to awaken, not just themselves, but anyone brave enough to step into their heat. You won't stay the same once you've been near them. They don't give you time to hesitate. They don't allow for excuses. They are the knock on the door you thought was forever closed. They don't ask for permission. They simply look at you and with fire in their gaze say, "Go, don't let this life pass you by without ever having burned for something." The world today is full of noise, but so few souls dare to touch. Aries touches, not because they try to, but because they're being fully, unapologetically themselves. In a world that teaches people to hide their feelings, Aries is a rebellion of light. And the most beautiful part is, when you stand near them, you start wanting to live more honestly with yourself. Not to be like them, but to be you, truly, boldly, and that right there might just be the holiest gift one soul can offer another. But like all sacred fires, if not grounded by inner stillness, that same light can turn into a wild wind, sweeping up everything in its path. And in that storm, Aries doesn't always realize the fire that once saved them can also consume them if they don't learn how to hold it with grace. Inside every beautiful flame, there's always the danger of a wildfire. And with Aries, that danger isn't a metaphor, it's reality, a truth so deep. Only those who have stood inside their storm know just how powerful and how devastating it can be. The same person who once made you feel like you could fly can also be the one who sends you crashing to the ground. In a single moment of emotional freefall, no warning, no logical build-up, just one trigger and suddenly everything collapses like a house built on sand. Aries doesn't act because they don't think, they act because when emotion floods in, they become that emotion. There's no separation between, I feel this and I am this. They don't pretend, they're simply too honest to fake their feelings. And sometimes, that honesty shatters everything. I once watched an Aries walk away from someone they deeply loved, just because of a single word that hurt their pride. They didn't stay to talk it out. They didn't give themselves space to breathe. They walked away, heart on fire, leaving behind what could have been a piece of heaven, now reduced to ashes. I've also been on the other side. I watched an Aries destroy a shared dream, not because they stopped caring, but because a flash of anger spoke louder than the voice of patience. And by the time they realized it, it was too late. But you know what? I don't resent them, not anymore, because I finally understand. Behind every impulsive act is a soul that was never taught how to sit with its pain, a heart that never learned how to breathe. When the heat rises, a child within that was never told it's okay to feel deeply. But not every pain needs a reaction. Some pain just needs to be heard. Aries isn't cruel. They're not trying to hurt you. They're just trying to survive their own storm. And when the fire inside burns too hot, they can't always tell who they're burning. They don't lash out to gain control. They react because it's the only way they know to stop themselves from being consumed. And when the fire dies down, they're left with something even harder than rage, regret. A quiet kind of sorrow that doesn't know how to turn back. I once heard an Aries whisper, "I hate myself every time I lose control, but I don't know how to stop." And in those words, I didn't hear pride. I heard longing, a soul aching for someone to show them how to be still, someone patient enough to sit with them without judgment, someone who believes they're not just the fire but a whole world that's still learning how to heal. Aries is often misunderstood, seen as selfish, blunt, explosive. But if you look deeper, you'll see the cracks they never let anyone see. Old wounds, unspoken memories, learned survival patterns that taught them how to react instead of reflect, and that's why they don't need to be fixed. They need to be loved, not despite their fire, but within it. Loving an Aries doesn't mean taming them. It means walking beside them as they learn to hold their flame with wisdom, to remind them no one is asking them to be perfect. only to reach into their pain without losing themselves inside it. A flame that doesn't know how to burn can destroy a whole forest, but a flame that learns how to breathe becomes a guiding light. And sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the outburst itself. It's when the fire inside an Aries stops being light and becomes thunder, cracking through the hearts of those who love them. Not everyone has witnessed the true rage of an Aries, but if you have, you'll never forget it, because it isn't just anger. It's a storm, a soul breaking open, an emotional earthquake that shakes everything within reach. Aries doesn't get angry in drops. They erupt. They release a pain that never had words, a force that's been building inside for far too long, like a volcano that never learned how to breathe slowly. And when it finally breaks the surface, it no longer knows who's enemy or friend. Someone once told me, when an Aries gets mad, you don't recognize them anymore. And worse, they don't recognize themselves either. But you know what? Beneath that fury, there isn't cruelty. There's a soul begging to be seen. It's the cry of a child within who never learned how to say, "I'm hurting." We're taught how to control emotions, but rarely how to hold them. And Aries, with heaven's fire in their chest, often has nowhere safe to lay it down. They don't know when or how to stop, because no one ever taught them that stopping isn't weakness, it's compassion for themselves. I once loved an Aries, and I remember the panic in their eyes after they exploded. Not panic over what was broken, but fear that no one would stay after the storm passed. And I understood, because when you've never had someone sit beside your rage, you live with the constant fear that love will walk away the moment you show your fire. But here's the truth. We all deserve love, even in our worst moments. And Aries, more than anyone, needs someone who will stay after the storm. No one teaches you that anger can also be something sacred. That when you look closely enough, it's not just destruction, it's a signal, a bell, an invitation to begin healing. Yes, the rage of Aries can be terrifying, but it's also a doorway, a threshold into awakening, because beyond the storm is a heart still learning how to love without needing armor. A heart still learning that you don't have to scream to be heard if you are an Aries or if you love one. Please remember this. Your anger doesn't make you bad. It only means something inside you is asking for care. Learn to walk away from the fire without burning down what you've built. Learn to hold your flame without letting it consume everything you love, because sometimes true strength isn't about putting the fire out, but about sitting next to it, listening to it, and saying, "I hear you." Every fiery soul needs a soft place to land, and in the quiet heart of patient stillness, new dreams finally begin to take root. Aries lives as if time is a wild beast chasing them down. They don't walk, they charge. They don't wait for a signal, they are the signal. The moment an idea sparks in their mind, they're already moving. In their world, delay means the death of inspiration. Everything has to happen now, immediately, fully, or not at all. They can't stand limbo. They don't know how to live in the in-between. Because to them, waiting feels like torture. But life doesn't work like that. I once watched an Aries plant the seeds of a beautiful dream, only to abandon it days later, because the soil hadn't cracked open fast enough. They asked, "Why isn't it growing? Did I do something wrong?" And instead of watering it, they walked away onto a new field, a new dream, a new beginning, leaving behind the seed that was only one breath away from spring. If you've ever loved an Aries, you know that feeling. It's like dancing with the wind, vibrant, wild, breathtaking, but never still long enough for your roots to truly take hold. But I don't blame them, because I understand that impatience. It doesn't come from carelessness. It comes from a deep fear, a fear of not making it, of not becoming something before it's too late, a fear of running out of time before they can leave their mark. In the heart of an Aries, time is a traitor, so they run not to beat others but to avoid being left behind. But here's the truth. When you run too fast, you often leave behind the very thing you once prayed for. They might start 10 projects, 10 relationships, 10 soul missions, and then abandon them all because the results didn't come fast enough. And each time they tell themselves, "It wasn't meant for me." But sometimes the truth is simpler. They never stayed long enough for the miracle to arrive. This world already rushes too much. We don't need more souls giving up just because the harvest didn't bloom overnight. We need those who dare to stay, who dare to water what grows slowly, who dare to believe in the season even before the flowers show. Aries, if you're listening, patience is not the enemy of your fire. It's the ground beneath it. It's the sacred container that helps your flame burn not just once, but for a lifetime. I used to think quitting was weakness, but now I know. Most people don't leave because they are weak. They leave because they haven't yet learned the sacred rhythm of the soul, the wisdom that what comes slowly often stays longer, and what takes time is usually what's most worth keeping. You can't force a flower to bloom before the sun rises. You can't rush a heart to grow while it's still a seed. You can only wait with gentleness, with faith, and with the trust that every miracle needs time to take shape. I know you're eager to reach the summit, but before you climb higher, maybe it's time to ask yourself, what is the real weight that's been holding you down? Aries was born with the sacred call of victory echoing in their chest. They don't just want to lead, they want to outshine. They don't just want to be good, they need to be the best, the first, the one everyone remembers. Even as children, many Aries carry the feeling that they were meant to do what no one else could. They walk into a room with eyes blazing, not to fit in, but to make their mark. They see the mountaintop and their heart refuses to settle for halfway. There is nothing wrong with the hunger to rise, but problems begin when that light becomes too blinding. They don't mean to dim anyone else, but in running too fast, they don't always realize who's been left behind. The ones who once believed in them, walked beside them, loved them. Sometimes, those people were just hoping for a glance, a word of recognition, a hand to hold along the climb. I was once beside an Aries at their peak, and I was also the one who fell out of their line of sight when they moved too fast, not because they were heartless, but because when an Aries is chasing glory, they lock in on the finish line. They don't see their own shadow stretching behind. They don't hear the slowing footsteps of those who once matched their pace. And one day, they look back and they are alone. The Aries ego isn't rooted in empty pride. It's armor, a shield built for survival, a belief that says, if I'm not exceptional, I'll be forgotten. If I don't come first, I won't be loved. It's not arrogance, it's fear, beautifully hidden beneath a fire-lit gaze, the fear of not being enough unless they're the best. But you see, real light doesn't need to compete. It knows it shines. I once watched an Aries sit in silence beside the trophy. They fought so long to win, and their tears didn't fall from joy but from the quiet pain of realizing there was no one left to share it with. When you pour everything into finishing first, you may win, but the price is solitude. An unhealed ego robs Aries of joy. It clouds appreciation. It forgets others. And in the rush to prove themselves, they miss the truth. Greatness isn't about reaching the top alone. It's about who you bring with you on the way up. Because the strongest warrior isn't the one who finishes first, but the one who's brave enough to stop midway, turn around, and lift up the one who's fallen behind. Sometimes, true victory is standing at the summit, still holding someone else's hand. Aries, if you're listening, you don't need to outshine others to be great. You just need to be true to yourself. You don't have to stand in the spotlight to be loved. You only need to learn how to shine in a way that lets others feel seen in your light. And when that happens, when your ego becomes encouragement instead of separation, when your fire inspires instead of blinds, you're no longer just a winner, you become a guide, because a true warrior never needs to take the light, their very steps bring it into the darkest places. And that's when you'll finally understand, not everyone who's born to lead was meant to walk alone. When an Aries truly grows, they don't lose their fire, they don't slow down, they don't give up their hunger to conquer the world, but they transform the way they show up. They're no longer the storm, they become the wind that knows where to go. They no longer burn everything in their path, they begin to ignite only what's ready to be lit, only what needs to come alive. That's the moment when the soul of a warrior begins to evolve into the soul of a master. And that transformation doesn't come from books. It comes from living, from rage and regret, from starting and walking away, from climbing all the way to the top, only to look around and realize they are alone. And in that silence, something soft opens. They place a hand on their heart and whisper, "What part of me needed to be loved, but was never truly held?" Aries, when you've walked through enough pain, you don't move slower because you've lost your flame, you move with intention because you've realized true light doesn't need to shout. It radiates from a heart that no longer needs to prove anything. I once met an Aries like that. He used to be the first to jump into projects, into dreams, into any unfinished idea as long as it sparked fast. His speed made him a star, but it also blurred the ground beneath him. And one day he fell, no one caught him, no one waited, and in that moment, when everything he'd built seemed to collapse, he listened. For the first time in his life, he didn't ask, "What should I do?" He asked, "What do I truly need?" And the answer didn't come from the outside, it came from the quiet within, a sacred whisper that said, "Stop running, stay with yourself." Since then, he still creates, still leads, still inspires, but he's no longer frantic. He knows when to move and when to wait. He listens to others, not to reply, but to understand. He leads not by commanding, but by embodying calm. He's been broken, and he's chosen not to break others. That is Aries, when the warrior becomes wise, no longer fighting to prove who they are, but standing still, to hold space for the storms inside others. And you know what? They're still powerful, even more powerful. But it's no longer the kind of power that crushes, it's the kind that lifts. The kind of strength that doesn't make others feel small, but makes them feel seen. Healed Aries no longer use their fire to destroy. They use it to warm. They don't use their speed to outrun their emotions. They use it to connect faster, deeper, realer. They don't shout to be heard. They sit in silence and people listen. That's when you no longer see an Aries rushing through life. You see someone present, fully, calmly, radiantly, like a sacred flame that never goes out. And then, you realize something powerful. They didn't come to make you feel safe. They came to wake you up, to remind you of what you forgot, that you can live fully, that you deserve to be seen, that you don't have to run. You only have to walk step by step to the rhythm of your real heart. Thank you for opening your heart to listen. Thank you for walking through this journey of light and shadow with Aries, not just to understand them, but to understand yourself. May you always have the courage to live with the fire in your soul and the wisdom to keep it burning without burning what you love. Be at peace, be radiant, be free, just like the destiny you were born to fulfill.